A water crisis is unfolding in the nation's southwest as the mighty Colorado River begins to dry up as a result of overconsumption.
Colorado River is drying up and states are bracing for steep water cuts in the near future.
The federal government has declared a shortage on the Colorado River, which provides water to nearly 40 million people.
The Colorado River is one of the most important lifelines in the western United States. It stretches nearly 1,500 miles and winds through some of the most arid land in North America. It crosses 7 states: Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and California, and supplies water to over 40 million people. To manage the river, the 7 states signed a historic agreement over 100 years ago. The idea was simple: divide the water fairly so that every state could grow. But the reality no longer matches the promise. Today, the Colorado River is in danger. Its flow has been declining for over 2 decades. The 2 largest reservoirs in the country, Lake Mead and Lake Powell, are at their lowest levels since they were built. Entire stretches of the river have shrunk. This isn't just a drought, it's a full-scale water crisis. But while most states have started cutting back, California continues to take the largest share. It uses more water from the Colorado River than any other state. Arizona is being hit hardest. Nevada is nearing its limits. Even Texas, a state that doesn't receive water from the Colorado, is feeling the ripple effects. How long can this river keep holding up a region that keeps asking for more? And who decides what's fair when the water finally runs out? In this video, we investigate the growing crisis on the Colorado River and the deepening fault lines between the states that depend on it. Before we start, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. And now, let's dive in. 6 states versus California. For 100 years, the Colorado River has been divided by an agreement called the Colorado River Compact. Signed in 1922, it was meant to prevent conflict between the 7 states that depend on the river. It gave each state a share of the water based on the needs and expectations of the time. But those expectations were built on flawed assumptions. The river seemed abundant back then. Nobody imagined it could one day run low. Now that future has arrived. The river's flow has dropped sharply over the past 2 decades. Snowpacks in the Rocky Mountains are melting faster and feeding less water into the system. Temperatures are rising, and the soil is absorbing more than ever before. At the same time, demand across the Southwest keeps growing. Cities, industries, and farms are all competing for a shrinking supply. Reservoirs like Lake Mead and Lake Powell are nearing historic lows. The 7 states that share the river have been under pressure to respond. In 2023, 6 of them, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming, came together to offer a solution. They proposed a joint plan to cut water usage by several million acre-feet over 3 years. These cuts would affect everyone, from small towns to major farm districts. It was a hard decision, but these states recognized the danger. If they did not act, the system could break. But California chose a different path. Instead of signing on to the 6-state plan, California submitted its own proposal. It offered smaller cuts, mostly voluntary, and only if reservoir levels dropped even further. California's leaders defended their position by pointing to legal seniority. Their water rights go back decades. By law, they claim priority over others when shortages hit. But in practice, this has created a growing divide. California still receives more water from the Colorado River than any other state. The Imperial Valley alone uses more than the entire state of Nevada. While Arizona farmers prepare for dry fields, California continues full-scale irrigation. While other states impose restrictions on growth, California clings to agreements written when the West looked very different. This tension is now threatening the future of the entire river system. Cooperation was the foundation of the 1922 Compact. Without it, the balance breaks. If California refuses to reduce its use while everyone else is cutting back, then the system will drift closer to collapse. And if that happens, no one wins. How long have you lived near the Colorado River? Have you noticed changes in water supply in your area? Tell us in the comments. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now, we move on. Broken 1922 deal. The Colorado River Compact was signed in 1922 to prevent water conflicts across the American West. It divided the river between 2 major groups of states. The Upper Basin includes Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. The lower basin includes California, Arizona, and Nevada. Each side was promised 7.5 million acre-feet of water per year. On paper, the agreement seemed fair and forward-thinking, but the deal was built on a false idea. The negotiators believed the river could deliver more than 17 million acre-feet of water each year. That was based on a short period of unusually high flow. They ignored warnings from scientists who said the river's real average was much lower. As a result, the agreement promised more water than the river could actually provide. From the very beginning, it was overloaded. That flaw did not matter at first. In the early decades, most states were not using their full share. California took the lead in development and claimed the biggest portion. The others were slower to build canals and reservoirs. There was enough slack in the system to keep the peace. But over time, demand grew, and the margins disappeared. By the 1990s, total water use was closing in on the river's actual supply. Since 2000, the river's flow has dropped even further. In many years, it now delivers just 12 to 13 million acre-feet. Yet the legal system still expects to distribute more than 15. The numbers no longer add up. The compact is trying to divide a river that no longer exists as it once did. The agreement also failed to plan for several key realities. It did not account for evaporation, which now removes over 1 million acre-feet from the system each year. It did not include any protections for ecosystems or wildlife. It overlooked the needs of Native American tribes, many of whom hold senior water rights. And it left Mexico with no guaranteed share until a later treaty in 1944. In the face of modern conditions, the compact is showing its age. When it was signed, there were fewer than 7 million people living in the Colorado River Basin. Today, there are over 40 million. The same document that once brought stability is now creating tension. States are trapped by a system that assigns rights based on outdated assumptions. Legal obligations clash with physical reality. Federal agencies have been forced to step in. Emergency drought plans have become the new normal. Cuts are being negotiated year by year, but the foundation remains unstable. As the river keeps shrinking, every flaw in the original deal becomes more dangerous. Is it time to completely rewrite the Colorado River Compact, or is there still a way to adapt the old system to fit a new world? Tell us what you think in the comments. Now, please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. Even Texas feels it. The crisis on the Colorado River is now so severe that it is being felt even beyond the river's own basin. Texas is not part of the Colorado River Compact. It receives no direct water from the Colorado River system. The river flows west of its borders, serving 7 other states. On paper, Texas has nothing to do with this crisis, but the effects are already reaching across the line. The western water shortage is reshaping everything around it. As California, Arizona, and Nevada face cuts, pressure is building elsewhere. People are moving. Businesses are relocating. The weight of the crisis is shifting east, and Texas is absorbing more than it expected. Over the past decade, hundreds of thousands of people have left California and Arizona. Many have moved to Texas in search of opportunity and space. They bring with them their water needs. The result is growing demand on systems that were already under strain. Cities like Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas are expanding fast, but the water supply has not kept pace. At the same time, Texas is facing its own drought conditions. The Rio Grande, the state's southern lifeline, has been drying up more often and more severely. Reservoirs in the Rio Grande Valley have dropped below critical levels. In some regions, farmers have gone years without full irrigation deliveries. Groundwater is being pumped faster than it can be replaced. When other states lose access to the Colorado, they start looking elsewhere. Some have floated the idea of piping water from East Texas to the west. Others are exploring groundwater deals that could tap into Texas aquifers. In the face of scarcity, every source becomes a target. And when water moves, politics follows. Texas is now investing heavily in water infrastructure. Billions of dollars are being spent on pipelines, desalination plants, and long-term planning. The goal is to stay ahead of the curve, but the state is no longer insulated. What happens to the Colorado River no longer stays within its basin. This is not just about one river drying up. It is about how the collapse of one system can create shockwaves across an entire region. As water becomes more valuable, the competition to control it becomes more intense, and even states outside the deal find themselves caught in the crossfire. How long have you lived in Texas? Have you noticed how the Colorado River crisis is starting to affect your region? Let us know in the comments. Share this video on X to help us grow. Every share counts. Arizona hit first. Cracks are opening in the soil across central Arizona. In places once used for farming, the ground is literally splitting apart. Deep fissures have appeared near highways and homes. Some stretch for hundreds of feet, tearing through the desert floor. This is not an earthquake. It is the result of overpumping groundwater to survive the Colorado River crisis. And Arizona is being hit first. When the first official water shortage was declared on the Colorado River, Arizona felt the impact before anyone else. The cuts did not fall evenly across the region. They followed a legal structure built decades earlier, and that structure placed Arizona near the bottom. While California held on to its full allocation, Arizona began losing water almost immediately. The foundation of this imbalance goes back to the 1960s. In order to gain federal approval for the Central Arizona project, Arizona had to make a trade. It accepted junior status on the river. That meant when shortages came, its share would be reduced before California's. At the time, the deal was seen as necessary. The project would deliver water to Phoenix, Tucson, and vast farming regions in between. But no one imagined how deep the future cuts would go. Now that future has arrived. The Central Arizona Project, or CAP, is one of the most important pieces of water infrastructure in the state. It stretches over 300 miles and carries Colorado River water across the desert. It supplies homes, industries, and farms that could not survive without it. But as shortages worsen, that lifeline is starting to break. Pinal County, one of Arizona's major agricultural hubs, has already lost much of its CAP supply. Farmers have been forced to fallow fields and abandon entire growing cycles. Some have drilled new wells, but groundwater is limited and expensive to access. Many are now operating at a fraction of their former output. In some areas, the change has been sudden and severe. Cities have also been forced to adapt. Water managers in central Arizona have imposed new restrictions, paused future development, and started looking for alternative sources. Some are turning to recycled water. Others are exploring costly desalination projects or far-off import options. None of these are simple solutions, and all of them take time. While California maintains full-scale irrigation and urban delivery, Arizona is watching its water disappear, and with it, the ground is starting to break apart. What began as a legal compromise is now turning into physical damage that cannot be ignored. Are you from Arizona? How do you feel about the way California is handling this crisis while your state takes the hit? Let us know in the comments. Your voice matters. Nevada fights smart. Nevada receives the smallest share of Colorado River water. Out of all the states in the lower basin, it gets just 300,000 acre-feet per year. That is less than 7% of what California takes. And yet, Nevada has become a model of how to stretch every drop. Las Vegas is one of the fastest-growing cities in the country. It sits in the heart of the Mojave Desert, where natural water sources are nearly non-existent. The city depends almost entirely on Lake Mead for drinking water. There are no major rivers flowing through the valley, no snowmelt from the mountains, just one aging reservoir that is shrinking year after year, in a place where summer temperatures often reach above 110 degrees, and where rainfall is rare. The growth of Las Vegas has always defied the environment around it. Hotels, casinos, suburbs, and shopping centers continue to spread across the desert floor. New developments are breaking ground even as the water supply shrinks. The disconnect is becoming harder to ignore. When the drought began to worsen, Las Vegas had no choice but to adapt, and it did so aggressively. Over the past 2 decades, southern Nevada has removed thousands of acres of decorative grass. Golf courses and resorts switched to reclaimed water for irrigation. Homeowners were paid to tear out lawns. The region now recycles nearly all indoor water and returns it to Lake Mead. Even fountains on the Las Vegas Strip follow strict conservation rules. These efforts worked. Despite rapid population growth, Nevada cut its total water use by nearly a third. It became one of the most water-efficient regions in the Southwest. But efficiency has limits. And now, the limits are getting closer. As Lake Mead continues to drop, Nevada faces a new challenge. Its main intake pipes are deep below the surface, but they cannot go much lower. The state has built additional tunnels to reach the bottom of the lake. These engineering projects were designed to buy time. But if the reservoir keeps falling, even those systems will face pressure. Nevada has supported aggressive action in regional negotiations. It sided with Arizona and other states to push for deeper conservation across the board. But when California resisted, the limits of diplomacy became clear. Nevada does not have the political weight of its neighbors, and it cannot afford to wait while others delay. For now, Las Vegas has avoided emergency rationing, but there is no cushion. If water deliveries drop any further, even the best-run systems will start to crack. There is no hidden supply waiting underground. There is no backup plan across the mountains. Nevada cannot cut much more, and it cannot force other states to act faster. This is the edge of efficiency. After all the smart planning and bold moves, the water simply may not be there. Are you from Nevada? How confident are you that your state is ready if this crisis gets worse? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your view. California's overreach. California lies along the western edge of the United States, stretching from the Mexican border to the Pacific Northwest. Despite its size and coastal access, the state faces a severe water crisis due to its massive population, intensive agriculture, and long history of over-reliance on external water sources like the Colorado River and Sierra Nevada snowpack. California receives the largest share of water from the Colorado River. Under current agreements, it is entitled to 4.4 million acre-feet per year. That is more than Arizona and Nevada combined. It also holds senior water rights that give it legal priority during shortages. While other states are forced to cut back, California can continue drawing water almost uninterrupted. This system was built on deals made a century ago. In the early 1900s, California was the fastest-growing state in the Southwest. It had farmland in the Imperial Valley and booming cities like Los Angeles. Its leaders negotiated aggressively to secure water rights before other states even had infrastructure in place. Because California developed early, it got to the front of the line. But what once seemed fair no longer feels balanced. Today, California remains one of the largest agricultural producers in the world. It uses Colorado River water to grow thirsty crops like alfalfa, rice, and almonds. Some of this produce is exported overseas. Huge canals carry water to farms in the desert, while other states leave fields dry. At the same time, major metro areas like Los Angeles and San Diego rely on the river to keep lawns green and fountains running. Other states are tightening water restrictions. They are pulling out grass, recycling wastewater, and turning off taps. But in California, many regions continue business as usual. Some cities have implemented conservation, but the cuts are modest compared to those in Arizona or Nevada. And because of its legal advantage, California has blocked proposals that would force shared reductions. In recent negotiations, California resisted emergency cuts. It pushed back against efforts to reduce deliveries in line with the shrinking river. This has created tension with neighboring states. Many believe California is protecting its interests at the expense of the entire basin. When one state refuses to compromise, everyone else pays the price. The imbalance is becoming harder to justify. As Lake Mead and Lake Powell hit record lows, California continues to draw more than anyone else. Critics say this behavior endangers the entire system. If the reservoirs collapse, there will be nothing left to divide. Meanwhile, California is feeling its own kind of water crisis. Years of drought have dried out forested regions and increased the risk of wildfire. And when rains finally return, they often arrive with destructive force. In 2023, the long dry Tulare Lake in the Central Valley reappeared after historic flooding. Entire farms and towns were swallowed under muddy water. Some saw it as nature reclaiming what had been taken. California's grip on the Colorado River is powerful. But if it refuses to adapt, that grip could break the river for everyone. Are you from California or one of the neighboring states? Do you think California is doing its fair share? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Ignored stakeholders. While Arizona, Nevada, and California dominate the headlines, they are only part of the picture. The Colorado River also flows through 4 other states: Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Wyoming. These upper basin states face their own water challenges, but their struggles rarely make national news. In Colorado, the river begins its journey high in the Rocky Mountains. Snowmelt here feeds the entire system, but rising temperatures and shorter winters have reduced runoff. Mountain towns now face tighter limits on development. Ski resorts invest in water recycling. Farmers on the western slope cut back on irrigation. Yet downstream states still demand deliveries, leaving Colorado stuck between nature and politics. Utah is growing fast, especially in the Salt Lake City region, but water supplies are stretched thin. The state has proposed costly pipeline projects to move water from remote areas. Critics say these plans are unsustainable. Rural farmers are already losing access. The Great Salt Lake has shrunk to historic lows, raising fears of toxic dust storms and ecological collapse. New Mexico depends on the San Juan River, a major tributary of the Colorado. But recent years have brought extreme drought. Reservoirs sit at critical lows. Water disputes with Texas have increased pressure. Local agriculture has suffered, and cities like Albuquerque are forced to explore new water sources far from home. Wyoming contributes relatively little to the overall flow, but it still plays a role. Ranchers rely on early-season meltwater. Some conservation efforts have succeeded, including habitat restoration projects. Still, the state faces legal obligations to send water downstream. Even when local supplies are tight, it must balance compliance with survival. Amid all of this, one group remains especially overlooked: Native American tribes. They hold legal rights to about a quarter of the river's flow, yet many still lack basic infrastructure to access that water. In the Navajo Nation, for example, thousands of homes have no running water. Legal rights exist on paper, but support to use them often never arrives. The current system was built for large states and powerful agencies, but the crisis touches everyone. From mountain towns in Wyoming to desert farms in New Mexico, people are adapting quietly, with fewer tools and less influence. As tensions rise, their stories deserve attention too. Do you live in one of these upstream states? How is the Colorado River crisis affecting your community? Share your experience in the comments. We want to hear from you. River built the West. The American Southwest was largely uninhabited for most of recorded history. Native tribes lived near scattered springs and rivers, but the harsh desert limited growth. Large-scale settlement only became possible in the late 1800s. Railroads arrived, and new farming tools brought waves of pioneers. But even then, water remained the one obstacle no one could escape. That began to change in the early 20th century. Politicians and engineers set their sights on the Colorado River. Hoover Dam was completed in 1936. The All-American Canal followed in the 1940s. These massive projects finally brought the river under control. For the first time, water could be stored, diverted, and delivered across great distances. This single river made the modern West possible. Cities like Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Las Vegas depend on it to exist. They were built in dry basins with almost no natural freshwater. Without the Colorado, they would still be small desert towns. The river turned barren land into suburbs, highways, and airports. It gave value to land that once seemed worthless. Farms changed even more. With steady irrigation, the Imperial Valley became one of the most productive zones in the country. Arizona built the Central Arizona Project to move water hundreds of miles inland. Now the region grows produce all year long. Crops like lettuce, citrus, and cotton all rely on Colorado River water. Much of America's winter food comes from this supply. Dams like Hoover and Glen Canyon were built for more than just storage. They created electricity, controlled floods, and helped power new industries. For decades, the system worked. Growth continued. The desert was no longer a barrier. It was a destination. Now that system is breaking down. As river levels drop, the West is forced to face its limits. Water that once seemed endless is now unreliable. Dams are nearing dead pool levels. If they drop too low, they can no longer generate power. Some farms have already lost access to deliveries. Cities are cutting back, hoping to avoid full-blown emergencies. This is not a distant threat. In many places, it is already real. Wells are drying up. Canals are closing mid-season. Aquifers are shrinking with no sign of recovery. The West, built on abundance, is now struggling with scarcity. Yet development continues. New homes rise in desert suburbs every month. Large farms keep operating as if nothing has changed. Many leaders avoid speaking honestly about the danger, but the signs are everywhere. The Colorado River built the modern West. Now it is in crisis, and everything it made possible is at risk. Are you living in a city or working in agriculture that depends on Colorado River water? How would your life change if that supply collapsed? Tell us in the comments. We're listening. Federal failure. The Colorado River crisis did not begin in one season. It has been building for over a century, but over the past 3 decades, the situation has become critical while federal leadership failed to respond. At every major turning point, Washington looked the other way. In the 1990s, it became clear that California was consistently overusing its allocation. Arizona and Nevada were still developing, but California refused to scale back. The Bureau of Reclamation voiced concern, but no action followed. California had powerful allies in Congress, and few were willing to challenge them. In 2000, Lake Mead was near full. Within just 10 years, it dropped to half. By 2007, the state signed a shortage-sharing agreement. But it was a bandage, not a solution. The deal assumed that shortages would be rare. Federal officials avoided tougher reforms. During the Obama years, multiple reports warned that the river was overallocated, but the administration leaned on diplomacy over enforcement. States were urged to work together. California continued receiving full deliveries, while others made quiet cuts. By 2015, the cracks widened. Lake Powell and Lake Mead hit record lows. Still, the federal government avoided triggering legal reforms. Water law remained untouched. The political cost of forcing change was simply too high. Under the first Trump administration, the crisis accelerated. Cuts were discussed but rarely mandated. The administration favored state autonomy. Federal officials encouraged new talks, but no bold action followed. During the Biden presidency, water levels dropped even faster. In 2021, emergency Tier 1 cuts were announced. Arizona and Nevada lost major allocations. California did not. When asked why, federal officials cited legal seniority and delayed enforcement. In 2023, another round of negotiations collapsed. The federal government proposed reductions, but retreated when California refused. Now, in June 2025, President Trump faces the worst river conditions in modern history. Lake Mead is near dead pool. The Hoover Dam's power output is threatened. Farmers are running out of irrigation water. Cities are drilling deeper wells. Yet no federal mandate has rebalanced the system. Why has Washington waited so long? Because water is political dynamite. California produces a third of the nation's vegetables and dominates Western politics. Any move to cut its water invites lawsuits, lobbying campaigns, and electoral risk. Presidents avoid it, Congress avoids it, and the river suffers. Every year of delay brings irreversible damage. The legal system that governs the river was written for another era. Without firm action from the top, the entire Southwest may face collapse. Do you think President Trump should use federal authority to force a new deal? Or has the moment for leadership already passed? Tell us what you think in the comments. We want to hear your opinion. Disaster hits closer. The Bible says, "Let there be no strife between you and me, for we are brothers." Yet the 7 states of the American Southwest are locked in a growing feud. They share the Colorado River, but not the burden. As water levels plummet and tensions rise, many still cling to the belief that a great river like this could never truly run dry. History suggests otherwise. In China, the mighty Yellow River once flowed reliably to the sea, but in 1997, it failed to reach the ocean for over 200 days, not because of drought, but because too many users took too much. Farmers upstream diverted water to irrigate dry land. Cities expanded without limits. By the late 1990s, entire stretches of the river ran dry for months. Fisheries collapsed. Farmlands turned to dust. Drinking water had to be rationed in urban centers. China responded with sweeping reforms, strict water quotas, heavy investments in wastewater recycling, and relocation of water-intensive industries. It was costly, painful, and uneven, but it showed that once a river begins to disappear, it takes enormous force to bring it back. The Soviet Union's failure was even more dramatic. 2 powerful rivers, the Amu Darya and Sir Darya, once fed the Aral Sea, one of the largest inland lakes on Earth, but the USSR diverted them to grow cotton in the desert. In just a few decades, the sea receded into a toxic salt flat. Entire port cities were left stranded, miles from water. The fishing industry died. The region's climate grew harsher. Dust storms carried chemical residue across Central Asia. Health crises soared. And even after the Soviet collapse, Russia failed to reverse the damage. Unlike China, which at least tried to repair its mistake, Russia walked away. Today, despite controlling vast land and resource wealth, it remains one of the most careless nations when it comes to managing natural systems. It drains lakes, reroutes rivers, and leaves environmental scars that may never heal. These are not ancient histories. They happened within the last century, and they are not isolated to authoritarian regimes. The United States is now facing a similar reckoning with the Colorado River. Lake Mead and Lake Powell continue to fall. Snowpack is no longer a reliable safety net. Agriculture is suffering. Communities are running dry. Ground is cracking open across Arizona. And still, many act as if disaster will wait politely for a committee decision. There is still time to act. Desalination, water reuse, more efficient farming, and interstate pipelines are all possible, but they require unity, investment, and sacrifice. The longer each state insists it deserves more than the others, the harder it becomes to stop what is already unfolding. If we wait until the river is gone, there will be nothing left to negotiate. Do you believe the Colorado River can still be saved? Or is this just another case of repeating the mistakes of history? Tell us how this crisis is affecting your state, and what you think must be done before the river disappears for good. No water boomtowns. For most of history, people avoided settling in the desert. There was little water, poor soil, and no way to grow enough food. But in the 19th century, everything changed. Gold, silver, and copper were discovered across the Southwest. Prospectors and investors poured in, chasing massive profits. Under that pressure, the federal government built forts, allowed land grabs, and pushed railroads into the desert. Towns grew near mines, then expanded further when dams and canals brought water to places once considered unlivable. That is how places like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and southern Utah became major population centers. They offered sunshine, low taxes, and the promise of endless growth. But the growth never stopped, and now it is colliding with reality. Some of the fastest growing cities in the United States are being built where there is almost no water left. New neighborhoods keep rising in places that barely have enough supply for the people already living there. And yet construction crews keep pouring concrete, paving roads, and putting up houses by the thousands. These are the boomtowns with no water plan. Take Queen Creek, Arizona. Once a small farming town, it is now one of the most rapidly expanding suburbs in the Phoenix area. Developers are building homes faster than water agencies can review their long-term supply plans. The town relies heavily on groundwater, but those aquifers are running low. In some areas, wells now have to reach more than 1,000 feet just to find water. Then there is St. George, Utah. The city has doubled in size over the past 2 decades. It is surrounded by Red Rock Desert, and most of its water comes from the Virgin River. But that river is drying up more often, and the city's backup supply of underground reserves is also being drained. Officials once proposed building a pipeline to bring water from Lake Powell, but that idea collapsed when the reservoir itself began to vanish. In Buckeye, west of Phoenix, the population has exploded. It is expected to hit over 300,000 residents within a few decades. Yet parts of the city do not have legally guaranteed water for future homes. Developers submit proposals, get them approved, and start selling lots, often with only short-term water deals in place. The state even had to block some permits in nearby areas because groundwater projections showed they would not last 100 years. Despite these red flags, the growth continues. Cities chase population numbers like trophies, knowing they cannot keep up with the demand. Most leaders will be long gone before the wells run dry. How long have you lived in the Colorado River region? Do you think cities should limit their growth to protect water? Share your thoughts in the comments. Now, please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. Ghost lakes. The Colorado River doesn't begin in the desert. It starts high in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, where snowmelt from winter storms feeds small streams. These streams gather into rivers that flow southwest, carving deep canyons and bringing life to the dry lands below. Without that seasonal melt, the river would not exist. And without the river, neither would the lakes that once dotted the desert. But now, those lakes are vanishing. There are places in the American Southwest where lakes no longer exist. You can stand on dry, cracked ground that once held millions of gallons of water. Look around, and you'll see old docks stuck in the dirt, fishing signs pointing at nothing, and ghost towns where marinas used to buzz with life. These are the ghost lakes of the West, and their silence says more than any warning ever could. One of the most famous examples is Owens Lake in California. Once a deep and thriving body of water, it dried up completely by the 1920s. Water from the Owens River was diverted to supply Los Angeles, and the lake never recovered. Today, the area is a dry bed that produces some of the worst dust pollution in the country. The surface glitters with salt and chemicals, and the air often turns toxic when the winds rise. In Arizona, a similar fate hit the Santa Fe reservoirs near Flagstaff. Designed to hold water from snowmelt, they dried out after years of low precipitation and overuse. Locals who grew up boating and fishing there now drive past an empty basin surrounded by weeds and silence. What used to be a source of recreation and pride is now just a scar in the land. The Salton Sea in Southern California hasn't vanished yet, but it's heading that way fast. Created accidentally in 1905 by a canal breach, the lake once attracted tourists, birds, and even yacht clubs. But with no reliable source of inflow and constant evaporation, the water is shrinking. As it retreats, it exposes toxic lakebed soil, sending poisonous dust storms across nearby communities. Crops suffer, lungs suffer, and yet the water keeps disappearing. These ghost lakes aren't just historical tragedies. They are warnings of what can happen when water is pushed beyond its limits. Every time a river is redirected, every time groundwater is pumped without control, something further downstream begins to fail. The river basin that includes the Colorado is dotted with examples of total collapse. It's not just about falling levels anymore. It's about entire ecosystems being wiped off the map. And while engineers race to fix what's left, the truth is that some lakes will never return. They're gone for good. Their dry beds now serve as grim monuments to bad planning and relentless demand. The question is, how many more will join them? Do you live in the Colorado River region? Have you noticed lakes shrinking or drying up in your area? Share what you've seen in the comments. We'd love to hear your experience. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now we move on. The silent victims. Long before the United States existed, Native American tribes lived across the deserts, plateaus, and river valleys of the Southwest. Along the Colorado River, communities like the Navajo, Hopi, Ute, Quechan, and Hualapai relied on its waters to survive in a dry and rugged land. When the U.S. expanded westward, it made treaties with some tribes, but ignored or excluded others. The Navajo signed treaties in 1849 and 1868 that laid the foundation for future legal claims to water. The Hopi entered agreements later, but tribes like the Hualapai and many smaller nations never signed binding water treaties at all. This created a split that still affects their ability to defend their rights. Those with treaties can try to enforce them in court. Those without are often left out of negotiations entirely. Today, many of these tribes still live where their ancestors did. The Navajo Nation stretches across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. The Hopi live in northeastern Arizona, entirely surrounded by the Navajo Nation. The Quechan are based along the lower Colorado River near Yuma, Arizona. The Ute are concentrated in southern Utah and Colorado. The Hualapai live along the western edge of the Grand Canyon. All of them live inside or near the Colorado River basin. Yet many of their people still have no running water. In the Navajo Nation, tens of thousands of residents must haul water in plastic containers, sometimes from filling stations hours away. Some use just a few gallons per day. Wells are often deep, contaminated, or unreliable. In 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the federal government is not required to secure water access for the Navajo, even though earlier treaties guaranteed the right to live on a permanent homeland. The court stated that the government had no duty to build pipelines or ensure delivery. For many Navajo, that decision felt like the final blow in a long pattern of broken promises. Other tribes face similar struggles. In the Hopi Nation, many homes rely on bottled water because groundwater sources have been tainted by decades of mining and neglect. The Hualapai finally secured a major water settlement in 2022, worth more than $300 million, but actual infrastructure projects are still years away. In the meantime, families survive on aging wells and limited supply. Even tribes with legal rights to large quantities of water often lack the means to capture or transport it. While new developments are approved across Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, and pipelines are built for cities and farms, tribal communities are left behind. Some tribes are negotiating for more funding. Others are still waiting to be recognized at all. Their needs remain out of sight, far from where decisions are made. How do you think this problem with native tribes and water access should be solved? What would be a fair approach? Share your thoughts in the comments. Share this video on X and Facebook to help us grow. Every share counts. The mega project mistake. Modern life in the American Southwest would not exist without the massive engineering projects that reshaped the Colorado River. What began as a wild desert waterway was gradually turned into a tightly controlled system of reservoirs, canals, pumping stations, and power lines. For most of the 20th century, the prevailing belief was simple. If there was not enough water, engineers would build a solution. From this mindset came some of the largest water infrastructure projects in American history. The Hoover Dam, completed in the 1930s, was designed to control devastating floods, store water during dry seasons, and generate electricity for the growing region. Behind it formed Lake Mead, which for decades served as the primary water reserve for Nevada, Arizona, and California. In the 1960s, the Glen Canyon Dam was constructed further upstream to regulate river flows and expand storage capacity. It created Lake Powell, another massive reservoir that became central to water management across the West. These dams were seen as symbols of progress and national strength. They supported agriculture, allowed cities to grow, and turned deserts into productive land. Yet these same structures now reveal serious flaws. Both Lake Mead and Lake Powell lose enormous volumes of water each year due to evaporation. Their wide, sun-exposed surfaces release billions of gallons into the air. The long canals that carry water from the river into Arizona and California also lose significant amounts through seepage. Engineers once believed the benefits outweighed the losses, but the math no longer works in a time of long-term drought and shrinking snowpack. Environmental impacts have also mounted. The construction of these dams fundamentally changed the river's ecosystem. Cold water released from the depths of Lake Powell altered habitats downstream, disrupting fish species adapted to warm seasonal flows. The natural floods that once delivered sediment and nutrients no longer occur, damaging riparian areas that supported birds, plants, and wildlife. At the river's end in Mexico, what was once a vibrant delta has become cracked soil and dust. Native species have declined, and efforts to restore balance have struggled to succeed under the weight of the existing infrastructure. There is also a deeper problem with the logic behind these mega projects. The Colorado River Compact of 1922, which guided development of the entire system, was based on years of unusually high flow. In reality, the river carries much less water. Today, climate shifts, lower snowmelt, and rising demand are pushing the system beyond its limits. Still, the infrastructure continues to operate as if the river can support all of its old obligations. That assumption is no longer supported by nature. Some experts argue that the era of massive infrastructure has passed. Newer strategies like water recycling, aquifer recharge, and targeted conservation are proving more effective, but the older system still dominates budgets and decision-making. It demands constant maintenance, consumes energy, and encourages outdated priorities. What was once seen as a solution now looks more like a trap. What about where you live? Do you feel like these massive water projects are working on you? Let us know in the comments. Mexico left dry. Most Americans never think about what happens to the Colorado River after it leaves the United States. The truth is, by the time the river reaches the border with Mexico, there is barely anything left. Almost every drop has already been claimed by cities, farms, and industries in the American Southwest. What reaches Mexico is not a powerful river but a narrow, weakened stream. Sometimes it does not reach the sea at all. Under a 1944 treaty, the United States agreed to deliver 1.5 million acre-feet of water to Mexico each year. On paper, this sounds fair, but in practice, the water that flows south is often of poor quality, with high salinity and pesticide runoff. And in times of drought, American users get priority. The result is a system where the upper basin controls the flow, while Mexico gets the leftovers. For many in northern Mexico, this is not a river agreement. It feels more like a ration. Before dams were built, the Colorado ended in a massive green delta that stretched across the Sonoran Desert. It was once one of the richest wetland ecosystems in North America, home to birds, fish, and thick stands of cottonwood trees. Indigenous communities fished and farmed its shores. But since the construction of Hoover and Glen Canyon dams, that delta has withered. Most years, the river does not reach the sea. What was once a living artery is now a memory of moving water. This collapse has reshaped the lives of people in Baja California and Sonora. Farmers struggle with salt-damaged soil and irregular flows. Local fishing economies have dried up alongside the wetlands. Communities that once thrived along the river must now truck in water or depend on shallow, overdrawn wells. It is not just an ecological disaster. It is a slow-moving social one. In recent years, the United States and Mexico have tried to ease the damage. Agreements like Minute 319 in 2012 and Minute 323 in 2017 allowed for temporary releases of water into the delta, creating brief flows that mimicked natural floods. These events brought green shoots, migrating birds, and renewed hope, but they were short-lived and symbolic. The underlying structure of water management remains the same. Mexico has no real control over the source, and it cannot force the river to return. The Colorado is a shared river in name only. In function, it is almost entirely governed by the needs of the United States. Every dam, every canal, every policy decision upstream affects the people downstream, across a border they did not choose. As American farms water alfalfa fields in the desert, towns in Mexico wait for their share to arrive, often with disappointment. Do you think the old water agreements with Mexico should be updated for today's realities? What terms would you suggest? Share your thoughts in the comments. Farming the desert. In the middle of one of the driest regions in North America, you will find green fields stretching to the horizon. Irrigation ditches run between rows of crops. Giant sprinklers spin across sun-baked soil. At first glance, it looks like a miracle, but it is not a miracle. It is engineering, water rights, and a system that decided long ago that farming the desert was worth the cost. The Colorado River supplies water to more than 5 million acres of farmland. That is enough to cover the entire state of New Jersey. Most of this farmland is in Southern California, Arizona, and Southern Nevada. These are some of the hottest and driest places in the country, and yet they produce lettuce, almonds, cotton, and huge volumes of alfalfa. Alfalfa is not a food crop for people. It is grown to feed livestock. Every year, the region ships alfalfa across the ocean to countries like China, Japan, and Saudi Arabia. The river that once supported native plants and desert wildlife now supports cows overseas. Farming in the desert is extremely water-intensive. Alfalfa and cotton require vast amounts of irrigation. One bale of hay can take over 100,000 gallons of water to grow. Much of that water evaporates before it ever reaches the roots. In a cooler, wetter climate, these crops would not be a problem. But here, every gallon counts. And yet, agriculture still uses about 80% of all the water taken from the Colorado River. Cities get the blame when shortages hit, but it is the fields that drink most of the river dry. Other desert countries take a different approach. Nations like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates focus on growing drought-resistant crops such as dates, sorghum, and native legumes. These plants thrive in hot, arid climates and require a fraction of the water used by feed crops. They are not grown for export at massive scale, but to fit the environment they come from. Why does this continue? The answer lies in how the system was built. In the early 20th century, water rights were assigned to whoever used them first. Farmers in the desert were the first to divert water from the river. Their rights were locked in before cities even existed. Today, those rights still stand. Many farmers receive water at prices far below market value. Governments pay for the canals, the pumping stations, and the legal defenses that keep the flow going. Agriculture is also politically powerful. It has lobbyists, legal teams, and deep connections to state and federal agencies. Even during drought, many farms continue operating with little restriction. Cities like Phoenix and Las Vegas face cutbacks and water-saving mandates, while nearby fields stay green. The system was not built to be fair. It was built to prioritize those who got there first. And changing it means challenging laws, contracts, and interests that have been in place for generations. Do you think it makes sense to grow feed crops in the desert while cities are told to ration water? Let us know what you see happening where you live. Share your thoughts in the comments. Water for sale. Water from the Colorado River has become more than a resource. It is now a commodity that can be bought, held, and sold. In several Western states, this is legal. Water rights have become investments, traded by people who may never use a single drop themselves. Take Greenstone Resource Partners, for example. Through a subsidiary, the company bought nearly 500 acres of farmland in Cibola, Arizona. They then sold the farm's water rights to the suburb of Queen Creek, earning around $14 million in profit. This transaction involved over 2,000 acre-feet of Colorado River water. Local residents were shocked when crops stopped growing and the land turned to dust. Another major player is Water Asset Management, a New York-based hedge fund. The firm has acquired land and water rights across rural Arizona and Colorado. In some counties, they offered to sell that water to public agencies, but faced strong local resistance. Despite opposition, investment firms continue to buy up water as if it were oil or gold. These are not small local traders. Greenstone has financial ties to institutions like MassMutual, Barings, and Rabobank. Water Asset Management has openly described water as one of the most valuable commodities of the future. These companies can hold rights, lease them, trade them, or wait for prices to rise. They are not required to deliver water or even put it to use. At the same time, other investors are entering the market: pension funds, insurance groups, foreign-owned firms, and university endowments are all tracking water portfolios in the Southwest. Some argue that private markets promote efficiency by encouraging conservation. Others see it as dangerous speculation that drives up prices and undermines basic access to water. While all of this happens, many native communities are still waiting. The Navajo Nation and the Hopi tribe have long-standing legal rights to water, yet tens of thousands of people in those areas do not have running water at home. They depend on truck deliveries and plastic barrels. There are no pipelines to enforce those rights. Meanwhile, private investors can acquire water and sell it to whoever offers the best deal. They face no obligation to serve those in need. This imbalance is not illegal. It is the result of laws written a century ago, when whoever claimed water first received permanent priority. Those laws still rule. Today, hedge funds and developers win bidding wars while tribal communities face another year without plumbing. Is it fair that native communities still cannot get access to water, while water rights can be bought and sold by anyone with enough money? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thirsty giants. The United States is known as a land of innovation. This is the country that gave the world the airplane, the microchip, the personal computer, and the internet. American engineers developed GPS and built the systems that power modern life. Silicon Valley shaped the global tech industry. But even progress comes with a cost, and in the American Southwest, that cost is often water. Across Arizona, Nevada, and Utah, massive data centers are quietly becoming some of the region's largest consumers of water. These facilities run the internet, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency mining, and cloud services. Each server generates heat, and cooling them is essential. In hot desert climates, many tech companies rely on evaporative cooling systems that consume large volumes of fresh water. Google, Microsoft, Meta, and Amazon have built or are building massive campuses near Phoenix, Mesa, Goodyear, Buckeye, and El Mirage. These areas were chosen for their flat land, open space, and tax advantages. But all of these cities rely on the same strained water systems that support farms, homes, and tribal communities. In Maricopa County alone, experts estimate that local data centers could eventually consume as much water as a city of over 1 million people. One Microsoft facility in Goodyear is projected to use over 50 million gallons of water annually. In Mesa, Google holds permits that allow it to draw enough water each year to serve more than 20,000 residents. These numbers are not hypothetical. They reflect actual water rights and construction plans approved by local governments. And they continue to grow as more artificial intelligence models come online. AI training and usage require enormous computing power. Every request, from chat responses to image generation, adds to the load. This means more machines running constantly and more water needed to keep them cool. The rapid expansion of AI is quietly driving up resource consumption in the background while the public sees only the front-end technology. Local residents have started to notice. In Buckeye and El Mirage, wells have dropped near new tech developments. Farmers report changes in groundwater levels. In Mesa, community pressure forced one company to seek alternative water supplies from nearby tribal sources. The Gila River Indian community, which holds senior water rights, agreed to provide credits. But not every tribe or city has that kind of leverage. Some tribal nations are watching their water access shrink, while nearby servers run non-stop. These machines mostly serve distant users, not the communities they sit beside. And unlike farming or housing, the water used for cooling does not cycle back into the region. It simply evaporates. There is little transparency. Many companies decline to share full usage data, citing competition and security. Did you know that every AI request or cloud process may come with a hidden water cost in your town? Do you feel like these giants are draining water meant for your community? Let us know in the comments. The mirage of solutions. Across the Colorado River Basin, leaders continue to propose bold and expensive solutions. Giant pipelines, desalination plants, and underground water banks are promoted as ways to avoid hard decisions. But many of these projects are either too expensive, too slow, or ultimately just distractions from the deeper crisis. One of the most talked about solutions is desalination. Turning seawater into drinking water sounds promising, and facilities like the one in Carlsbad, California, are already operating. But desalination is extremely energy-intensive, costly to maintain, and creates brine waste that damages marine ecosystems. In Arizona, officials have discussed building plants on the Mexican coast and pumping water uphill into the U.S., but the costs would be astronomical, and the politics even harder. These projects are slow to build and offer only a fraction of the water the region actually needs. Another approach is underground water banking. Arizona's Water Banking Authority has stored millions of acre-feet underground since the 1990s. Cities and companies buy credits during wet years and hope to recover the water later. But in long droughts, there may be little left to store or retrieve. And just because someone holds a credit doesn't mean they can physically move that water to where it's needed. More controversial are the paper water deals. In Mesa, Arizona, a planned tech campus secured water by buying long-term storage credits from the Gila River Indian community. On paper, the site has water. In reality, the water stays in underground aquifers and never reaches the taps. Las Vegas has similar deals that allow it to claim water access even when Lake Mead levels fall. These credit systems allow growth to continue unchecked, while rural users and tribes face cutbacks. These big solutions create a comforting illusion. They give politicians something to promote and corporations something to invest in, but they rarely address the real issue: overuse. Desalination helps, but it cannot match demand. Underground banks store water, but only if there's extra water to begin with. Credit markets shift rights around, but do not create new supply. Meanwhile, farmers, small towns, and tribal communities still wait for the water they were promised. True solutions exist: smarter conservation rules, fairer distribution, stronger protections for local users. But these answers are politically harder and don't come with ribbon-cutting ceremonies. They require facing the uncomfortable truth. The river is shrinking, and we must shrink our use with it. What water projects are happening in your area? Do you think they're living up to their promises? Share your thoughts in the comments. Next, water war. Across the Colorado River Basin, old tensions are rising and new ones are forming. As water becomes scarce, competition is turning into conflict. States that once cooperated are now pointing fingers. Arizona and California clash over how much each can take from the river. Colorado and Utah push for more rights as their populations grow. Legal battles between states have already begun, and more are likely to follow. Within each state, the picture is just as tense. Urban areas with political influence often get priority. Rural communities, farmers, and tribal nations are left behind. Cities keep expanding while others are asked to conserve. Local governments argue over who should get access and who must cut back. Some utilities are suing each other over pumping limits and water transfers. Even within single counties, neighbors are turning into legal opponents. But this isn't just a domestic issue. Water conflicts are beginning to cross borders. The 1944 treaty between the United States and Mexico guarantees a share of Colorado River water to Mexican communities. In dry years, meeting that obligation becomes harder. Farmers in Texas have accused Mexico of withholding water from the Rio Grande, which they rely on for crops. In return, Mexican officials argue that the U.S. takes more than its share from upstream sources. Lawsuits and political disputes have already flared along the border. In some years, Texas irrigation districts report near-zero deliveries because promised water from Mexico never arrives. If international water tensions continue to rise, the consequences could go far beyond agriculture. Border security, trade agreements, and regional diplomacy may all be affected. The risk is no longer just economic. It is strategic. Water shortages can destabilize relationships between allies and spark disputes that once seemed unthinkable. The truth is, the Colorado River touches too many lives for one state or one country to control. What happens upstream affects everyone downstream. Without a shared plan, each group will protect its own interests. That means lawsuits, broken deals, and deepening divisions. But with trust and cooperation, the same water can be managed in a way that avoids crisis and supports everyone who depends on it. What solutions do you see for the Colorado River crisis? Share your ideas in the comments. Thank you for exploring the hidden corners of the USA with us. Click on the video you see on the screen to check out other hidden discoveries on our channel.